I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Angela.
We are the Ink Mages. Join us as we discuss all things fantasy, world building, storycraft, myths and legends, and of course, our own imaginative stories. Welcome to the Ink Mages podcast. Today we have a special guest with us. We are having an author interview and we are very excited about this one. So Angela, tell us who is joining us in the studio today.
Today we are having Jonathan Yanez. He is an international and US Today bestselling author of science fiction and fantasy. And man, one of my favorite things is some of the cover art that he has on his books. Be sure to check him out. Go to Amazon and look at some of the cover art and check out his stories. He's also a multi-award winning filmmaker, which hopefully we'll get to discuss that a little bit today on the podcast. But without further ado, let's welcome him into the studio. Welcome, Jonathan. We're so glad to have you on.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well, we are super excited to have you on the Ink Mages. The Ink Mages, we like to talk all things fantasy. We like to take all things sci-fi, and we especially love our nerd facts. So give us one fantasy nerd fact about yourself that you feel like people should know about you, or maybe they don't know about you and you would like to share.
I feel like at least once a day, for sure every other day, I always feel like there's something across the room that I need. And I'm like, oh man, I think of like I could just invoke the force to bring me that water bottle or that controller or whatever it might be that goes through my mind. And I try it and it still doesn't work, but maybe one day.
I love that. That's hilarious. I know I've had that thought before too, and just if only.
Yes.
I love that nerd fact. So that's obviously a Star Wars reference, and I am a huge Star Wars geek and nerd, and that is what inspired my love of sci-fi. So I'm curious, what inspired your love of sci-fi?
Oh man, like the earliest memories of fantasy for me would be C.S. Lewis. And then the earliest memories of sci-fi for me. I don't know if a lot of people think of superheroes as sci-fi, but I mean, Superman is an alien, right? And then also Iron Man, he has all that like mechanical robot tech suit of armor. So I think the earliest memories of sci-fi for me would probably be like superheroes and comic books.
Were you a big comic book reader then?
You know what? I didn't think I was, but I went to go visit my mom this weekend and she still had like comic books that I had when I was little. And I remember going to the library and along with books, also getting as many comics as I can all the time. So I'm not really like a collector, but I remember reading them like a ton when I was growing up.
Was that something that really inspired your writing? What really helped you first start going, I've got stories to tell. I'm going to become a writer?
I feel like for movies, what I would do when I was younger, I would think about like whatever movie I was watching, whether it was like Hercules or whatever it might be. And I remember going to sleep at night and rerunning the storyline through my mind. And then I would like put myself into the story as well. Like I would make up my own character and I would put him in the story and replay the story in my mind, but with my character in there as well. So I think that might be the earliest memory I have of storytelling.
I love that. See, this is why I love talking to other authors, because you're like, oh my gosh, somebody just like me. I mean, how many hours spent just imagining stories and imagining myself the hero or injecting myself into a story because the story was so amazing. It was such an epic thing to be a part of. And the story is just developing in my imagination. It was just such a powerful thing as a child. And for me, I never imagined that I would get to be the one writing those stories one day. What was it that got you to write your first book?
I think I had a normal job and it wasn't anything that I was passionate about. And I think that anytime my job got too heavy and I wanted to quit or too stressful or I needed an escape, I would go back to writing and I would never do anything with the stories, short stories here and there. So eventually I just reached a breaking point at my job. Like, hey, I don't want to be doing this for the next 5 or 10 years. So if I'm serious about not wanting to do this, like a change has to happen. So that's when I quit my job and
Wow.
then just put my back against the wall and said, this writing thing has to work out. There's no other option. It has to work.
Mm.
So that was 11 years ago now that I quit
Wow.
my job, and then just haven't looked back since.
How many books have you written now, 11 years later?
I'm not sure. So I think the last count was 90, but I'm not sure if that included like box sets, because you can write like a series and then you put that series into a box set. And then we also have like foreign translations. So I'm not really sure. I don't go back and count myself. I just heard it from a member on our team. Somebody had to count for some reason. So it's always important to me that I'm focused on the current project. Like the current project is the most important thing. Like a lot of people ask me too, like, oh, what's your favorite book to write? And I'm like, we have issues and problems if my favorite book I'm writing isn't my current book. Like if I'm thinking like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
that's my favorite book or that's my favorite series, and this book that I'm writing is just like whatever, I'm just doing this for money, then that's a serious problem. So it always has to be the book that I'm writing is the one that I'm most excited about.
Like when it comes to favorite characters that you've written, does that same thing apply? Like whatever book you're writing, that is my favorite character right now.
Yeah, so like I think back to characters in other books that I like and that I miss, like I'm talking about them like they're real people. Like I miss
Mhm.
hanging out with that character. But I feel like the character that I'm writing now, it has to, if I'm not connected to that person or if he's not my favorite, then again, I think we're going to have issues and readers are going to realize that too.
No, I really like that. I think that's actually really good advice for anybody listening. Just if you have a book to write, be passionate about the story that you're telling. Be passionate about the characters that you're writing on the page, because that's where you should be when you're writing your stories. So tell us about this new book that's going to be releasing, The Way of the Wolf.
Yeah, so Way of the Wolf takes place in the fantasy setting where there's murders that are happening in like an outlying border country colony. So the queen calls together, a group of like a captain, an inspector, and some trackers to go find out what's happening. And so it's a lot of mystery involved too. I don't want to give away too much, but there's cults and there's resurrections and magic and all kinds of crazy things as they unravel what's really happening with these murders.
I love the title
Thank you.
and I love the cover. Anything that has like wolf or an image of a wolf is going to grab me. So I love the premise. I've read the blurb, and it seems like there may be multiple point of views. I was going to ask because it seems like there's four main characters possibly. So if you could just let us know a little bit about the main characters, and if there is multiple point of views, that would be great because I love books that have multiple characters whose perspectives I get to, dive into.
Yes, so this one does have multiple points of view. There's four main characters. We have our captain, who's kind of going on behalf of the queen to make sure that nothing gets out of hand. Then there's a city inspector, who's kind of like a detective, who they're bringing back. He's retired, but he's coming out of retirement to help figure out what's happening with these murders. And then because the murders might not be done by a person, but maybe a beast, there's some trackers. It's a father and son tracking team who's also going along to help. So it's fun writing multiple points of view. I like first person and I like multiple points of view for different reasons. But I figure with multiple points of views, it's more like you're an insane person because then you're speaking from different people, right? And they all sound very different from one another, but it's all happening in your mind.
Yes. Now, if it is multiple, are you doing third person limited or are you doing first person? And at the beginning of every chapter, it lets us know whose
Yes.
POV we're in.
Yes. So it's third person, and then every chapter starts with their name, so you can know whose point of view you're in. So it's like a Captain Charlotte Sloan did this X, Y, and Z, or then like the Inspector Aerith Emerson.
These are some great names.
Thanks.
I have one more question about that book too. I saw like on Amazon, it's listed as a gas lamp fantasy, and I had never seen that term before. So can you kind of explain to our listeners what gas lamp fantasy is and how it differs from like high fantasy or steampunk fantasy?
Sure. So it is like a heavy, kind of like steampunk, but Victorian era gas lamp idea where I don't have airships, but like just discovered the locomotive. So the locomotive is like brand new in this world. And then, they have like rifles, like the flintlock rifles, but you also have magic. Have you ever seen Carnival Row?
No, but my husband has been on me to, check it out. He's like, you'd like it, knowing
Yes.
what I write. So
So similar like Victorian era meets steampunk meets the whole magic influence as well.
awesome. I love it. I have a book that is kind of in that vein that's coming out in a year. So when I saw your book, I'm like, I have to know what Gaslamp Fantasy is and the difference. And I think I already pre-ordered it. So I will be reading it.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely get on Amazon and pre-order because it is available for pre-order right now. And can I just ask you a question, just even for our listeners? Your covers are fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about how you develop your covers, what you think is important for a cover, maybe the process that you go to in creating a good cover?
Sure. So this cover is actually done by Spotify. So Spotify picked up the audiobook rights. So they'll be producing the audiobook. And I think when this airs, the audiobook and book will drop October 3rd. So it might already be out when our episode airs. So Spotify wanted to do the cover. And I was like, that's totally fine with me. Right? Less work, less money for me to invest. So I was like, yeah, for sure. And they did such a great job. They did a killer job on the cover, following, I think, the tropes of the genre, like what readers of the genre are expecting in a cover. I think they nailed it. But if we're talking about covers that we would do within our own company, so there's a site called ArtStation that we go to a lot. And ArtStation, there's thousands and thousands of talented artists, and you can look at different categories they're in, like what type of art do they do? They do fantasy, do they sci-fi? You can even, I think, look and see if they're open for commissions or if they're closed for commissions, if they do book covers or if they don't do book covers. That's how we found so many of our artists. And then from there, you can see samples of their work. So you can see, who's talented or what kind of look that you're going for. And then from there, you kind of like give them I forget what it's called, but it's almost like a cover inspiration sheet. We're like, hey, I really enjoy these covers, and give them a couple of ideas. And they really like these images, so they have somewhere to start with. And then what the artist will usually do is maybe give us just sketches, like 3 sketches of covers, and like which direction do you want to go in, and then we'll pick one. And then from there, they'll finish the sketch, and then from there, we can start doing color and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah, they're just you can tell so much about the story just by looking at your covers. And that can be a very difficult thing, especially for self-published authors to really nail and get right. So definitely, I recommend checking out his covers, especially if you're a sci-fi fantasy author and need some inspiration as far as what the cover should look like. Because you want people to get a sense of the story, and you want them to immediately want to grab that book and jump into it, knowing what it is that they're going to be sinking their teeth into.
For sure. And there's so much talent around the world. ArtStation's really cool is because you can work from like with an illustrator from Italy. We have another illustrator from Brazil. We have another illustrator from the Philippines. So it's people from all different areas and all different walks of life doing different series. And that's another point too. Like the same illustrator that we might have for a sci-fi series might not be the best fit for a fantasy series.
Yeah, and your sci-fi covers definitely scream sci-fi. And I love that there's usually like a character and there's a lot of movement. There's just an action about it. So very
Thank
engaging.
you.
It makes me want to like know more about the character when I see it in this like otherworldly, fantastic environment.
Thank you. Yeah, for the artist that we had do our sci-fi covers for the Forsaken Mercenary series, she actually like so talented. Loved working with her. She outgrew us, so she's working for a big video game company now. So she's
Oh, that's
like I
awesome.
don't know if she's the head designer, but she's definitely an illustrator for a video game. So that's kind of like what you have to realize about finding so much talent too. That eventually, because right, we can't give them full-time work. It's not like they're doing a cover every single day for us. We're reaching out and having them do a cover a month, maybe a cover like every other month for us. But they're a lot of times they're looking for full-time work. So when you find somebody super talented, within like a year or 2 years, this person is so good, they're probably going to get picked up by like, a visual arts department or a video game company or something like that.
So what's next for you, books wise and movies? We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yo, for sure. Yeah. So books wise, Way of the Wolf is coming out October 3rd with the audiobook through Spotify. So we're super excited about that. I'm finishing up our Galactic Guardian series with book 7 in January. And then I love sci-fi and I love fantasy so much. I always want to have a sci-fi series ongoing and a fantasy series ongoing. So Way of the Wolf will be our fantasy series that's going to go for a few more books after this. And then in January, when we close up book 7 of Galactic Guardians, I want to launch a new sci-fi series. So that'll be fun. It'll be fun to meet new characters. I'm not really a big fan of rules in general. I don't like rules, so it's really exciting for me when I get to write a book 1, because in a book 1, nothing exists yet. You get to make all the rules. But then later on the series, if it makes it to like book 10, then you have to think of like, oh man, what rules did I set up in like book 1 and 2 and stuff like that. So it's really fun writing the first few books of the series, and it's still fun later on. Like Forsaken Mercenary went 12 books. So writing books 11 and 12 was fun, but it was a lot of like, what did I say this character looked like in book 3, or what did I call their structure of government in book 5? So it's a lot of like going back and checking.
Do you find that it's hard when you're getting like 11 and 12 books deep into a series to keep the momentum and keep like the characters still learning and developing when you have that long of a series?
No, I'll give you my secret. So this is the secret that I learned. So within a long series, you should have like one big overarching theme, right? So the overarching theme for me in series is always like the main character, their growth. But then to keep things going, the smaller arcs are always the villains. So in the first like 4 books of a much longer series, I'll have them fighting a specific villain, and that's end of the 4-book arc. And then a new villain comes in. That's 4 more books. And then a new villain comes in. That's 4 more books. But overall, over the course of the whole thing, you get to see the character, the main character, growing and level up. And growing doesn't necessarily mean just emotionally. Like, yes, he's grown emotionally, but he's kind of like found family. So he's forming his team around him throughout the book, seeing new characters he gets to meet. And also in Lit RPG, they have what's called base building. So like if your character starts with nothing or very little, then maybe he gets a kingdom, and then maybe he gets to find some money, and maybe then there's like dragons who want to live at his kingdom. So it's like leveling up all the way through character, his relationships, his assets. So that's a lot of fun.
That's a great way of putting it. I could see myself like, okay, that's a great way to break it down and manage it better. Because otherwise I could get all these ideas and like, how do I keep it all together?
Yes.
Yeah, I find myself when I've written the 3 books, and I have to actually have my books in hand sometimes to recall, like, what did I say about this and how did I, because you have to keep within what you've created, like you said, within the rules. And so you think authors would have everything memorized, but honestly, I have to refer back a lot of the time.
No, I don't think it's only you. I think the majority of authors have to do that. There's other authors that I know who are way more successful than I am, and they're even saying like when they're writing, a book 6, they go back and read books 1 through 5 before they write book 6, so because they forget too.
So tell us about the movies. What's coming? What can people be looking forward to as far as what you are doing with your stories now?
Oh yeah, so Stephanie said that you enjoy Star Wars.
Oh, yes.
So we're turning Forsaken Mercenary, our book series, into a TV show. So Forsaken Mercenary, we got the same set designer who did Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka to do our sets for us. So the strike is not a good thing, right? The actor strike and the writer strike is not a good thing, but it is giving us the opportunity to maybe work with some people who maybe wouldn't have been able to or had access because they're off building sets for Disney, or like we got the stunt team from, there's a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. So the same stunt team who did stunts for that are going to do stunts for Forsaken Mercenary.
Wow.
So again, there's like opportunities and people who, since they're not working, since all the studios or the actors are on strike, nothing's being made right now. We're able to have conversations with them and then they're not as busy as they would be, so they're willing to,
Wow.
help us out and have capacity to work on our smaller projects.
So are you involved in the screenplay for writing it? What is your like main role then?
Yeah, so I write the screenplays and then after that I produce. So a producer is kind of like the coach. So if the quarterback's the director, then the producer is kind of like on the sidelines putting the whole team together. So the producer's finding the director and then they're finding the actors and finding the set designer and whoever's going to be doing the costumes. They're like putting the team together.
Um, so if you're doing the screenplay, have you found it like it's easy to take what you've written in your novel and switching it to the screenplay? Because it feels different. You may start in a different place than your novel does for the screenplay. So have you found that's been fun, challenging in any way?
Oh yeah, it's for me at least coming from writing novels, it's so much easier writing screenplays because like a novel that I'm writing is usually anywhere from like 80 to 100,000 words, or a screenplay for like a feature length film is like 17,000 words. So it's like 17,000
Wow.
versus 100,000. So it's so much easier for me to write a screenplay. It's a much different process, much different format,
Yes.
but it's easier for me too because a lot of it you're trusting. It's a more of a collaboratory experience too because you're trusting the director and the actors to get your words and draw inspiration from it and like how are they going to play these types of scenes. So this is our second project. So our very first project, Infinity System, is set to be like a TV show, definitely episodic. With Infinity System, we shot that, but since Infinity System doesn't exist in a book series yet, it was just an original idea. The agents and the entertainment lawyer who picked it up want to sell it as a book series first and then as a TV show. So that's why it's kind of been kind of like in a holding pattern because the literary agent is selling it first as a book series. And then with Forsaken Mercenary, that was a much different project because Forsaken Mercenary already exists in a book series. So now we'll be able to make it and then pitch right away for a TV show or a movie. I would definitely be open to both. I just I want it all. So I feel like with Infinity System, if that's already going to be a TV show, if somebody asked me like, "Hey, with Forsaken Mercenary, would you rather have a movie or a TV show?" Since we already have kind of Infinity System along the tracks of a TV show, I would lean towards Forsaken Mercenary as the movie, just because I want to do both.
So I didn't realize that Infinity System didn't have like books written yet.
Yeah, I
So
didn't
does
know that
that
either.
mean, is that coming up then? Like, so after The Way of the Wolf coming out, are you gonna like have to get on that and start writing books for the Infinity System?
Well, Infinity System, the literary agent wants to sell it to like a HarperCollins or Penguin Random House. So
Okay.
the traditional model of publishing takes much longer than the
Mm.
independent model. There's way more people that need to be involved in different branches of the organization. So she's still pitching Infinity System for a traditional deal. So while that's happening, I've already written book one. So book one's finished. She has it. So that's
Good
done.
for
So I'm
you.
kind of thanks. Yeah.
Good
Thank
job.
you. Thanks. So, well, that's kind of like going through the normal process. Like I have a friends in traditional publishing, and they say a normal traditional publishing path could take 2 to 3 years. And that's not slow. That's just normal, right? Because there's like, 25 people in the marketing department that have to all get on the same page. And then there's 30 people in the art department that all need to get on the same page and put it in their schedule when they have all these different releases coming out. So, well, it's not really in our nature to sit back and do nothing. So, well, that's kind of, going through its path, going through its life. That's why we decided to shoot Forsaken Mercenary. Because when we go to sell that, we won't need to sell it as a book series first because it's already out in a book series.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And is Forsaken Mercenary, is that complete? I can't remember if you mentioned that or not, if it's the series is complete.
Yeah, so there's 12 main novels in the Forsaken Mercenary series, and I think there's like four different like short stories.
There's a lot of potential for that show then.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's so I don't think I could say his name yet, but when we're casting for actors, one of the actors from Cobra Kai is going to play our lead in the Forsaken Mercenary film. I'm not saying his name yet because no contracts have been signed. But like
Yeah.
again, when we get to this point, there's like so many people involved. There's like it's not just like I can reach out to him like, hey, do you want to be in my movie? And he's like, sure. It's like his agent and his manager, and then on our side, our producers and our casting director, and everybody coming together. So there's already been verbal yeses, but we're because we're approved through SAG. We're a SAG approved project because the strikes that are taking place they're striking against like like Netflix and Disney and the larger studios. They're not striking against the little independent guys like us. Like we're giving them whatever they want. So we're a SAG approved project, but if we're using the SAG logo and saying we're SAG approved, we have to do contracts a specific way, a certain way too. So then all that takes time.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, how exciting to get to be in this place where you're seeing your stories come alive on the screen. I mean, even just seeing some of the people who are going to be playing your characters. I mean, this is what, to me, like the ultimate dream when you write a story is getting to see your characters come to life. So how exciting for you, Jonathan. What advice would you give someone who wants to write a book?
I would say like you have to find what works for you and be consistent with that. So whether it's 100 words a day, you can be consistent with that. That's fine as long as you're consistent. It should be like consistency and discipline over anything else. So I know some authors who are like, oh, I wrote 5,000 words today. I wrote 10,000 words, but you can't keep that up. So that means within like, a day or 2 or 3 days, they're just like burned out. So you have to find out what consistently you can hit. If that's like 5 days a week, you write 100 words, that's fine as long as you stick to that.
Consistency, you hit that stride. That's good advice.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me like, oh, like I don't feel motivated. How do you find, your motivation? I'm like, motivation has nothing to do with any of this. Like if I like nothing at all, right? Like I don't feel motivated to work out when I need to work out, but you still do it. I don't feel motivated to get up. On my days off, I take one day off a week. I take Sundays off. I usually wake up at 5 a.m. to work, but Sundays is my day to sleep in. So on Sundays, if my 3-year-old comes, and he wakes me up on my one day off and tells me he's hungry, I'm like, oh, I don't feel motivated to go make you breakfast this morning. You know what I mean? Like motivation doesn't really have anything to do with that. Like you need to get up as a parent and you need to go provide, some food for your child. So the same thing. So I would say like definitely don't rely on motivation because motivation will never take you the places that discipline can. Right. So like when it's time to work, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. It doesn't matter if I feel motivated or not. It's time to write. You just write. That's what you do. You just do your job.
I love that. I think, a lot of writers, they're waiting for that magical inspiration to come so that they want to write. And what I've noticed as a writer is, it's great when I'm having those writer spurts where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired and I'm going. But when I push through, when I don't feel like writing or I'm not feeling the magic per se, it's amazing how my work actually is still amazing on those days. You think that it would be less inspired, but it's not. And it just goes to show you it is a discipline and it's not always about how we feel. Creatives, we always want to go by how we feel or if we're inspired. And I think that there's needs to be both. Allow the inspiration to come. And sometimes you have to push through not feeling like it to get to the inspiration, I find.
Yeah. And what I found too is, so I definitely have had those. I've had the days where things are just flowing and everything's wonderful. And I've had the days where I'm just like ripping every single word out of my skull. But then when I go back to edit, I can't tell the difference. When I go back to edit and I read, I'm like, I can't tell the days like, oh, this day things are really good. I don't know. Or this thing when I'm writing like, oh, things are really hard that day. It all sounds the same.
It can be such a mindset thing of like, this is utter garbage. And I just had to fight so hard to get this word count down. And then you come the next day and you read through it and you're like, okay, this is a lot better than I thought. I don't know why I was like so down on myself. So, hey, fresh lens. Then you go into edit and you can actually really pick out the pearls that you had to dig to get on that paper.
Exactly. I think Picasso said that inspiration will find you, but it must find you at work.
Wow.
Right. So it's not like you can wait to be inspired. You will be inspired as you work.
Yes. Brilliant.
Wow. I think I'm going to take that quote and put it in the description.
Yes.
For all of us to refer to, because that's a really, really, really good quote.
Yeah, for sure. Like I even hear my 7-year-old repeating back to me sometimes, like, I forget what it is. She's talking to the 3-year-old and they had to do chores outside or something, and you're saying I don't feel like it. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter how you feel. We needed to get this done.
Let's
You
go.
adult.
She's paying attention.
Yes.
So tell us where we can find more information about you. Where can people go to find you? And tell us a little bit about the Wolfpack.
Okay, so if you're looking for our latest release, Way of the Wolf, you can find it, the ebook and paperback on Amazon and the audiobook on Spotify. And if you're looking just to find out more about maybe other books that I've written or who I am, you can go to jonathan-yanez.com. That's our website. And then we have a community of readers who we do all kinds of different things with throughout the year. We have like a in-person meetup in Vegas that we do every year. We have different events and meetups. We did one in Florida earlier this year too. So if you're interested in that, on Facebook, if you go to Jonathan Yanez's Reading Wolves, we've kind of branded the wolf as our logo. Actually, I'm wearing a shirt. We branded the wolf as our logo. So
That's super cool.
Thanks. We refer to ourselves as the pack. Everybody in our community is the pack. So if you want to find out more, we're on Facebook.
That's amazing. All of that information for Jonathan Yanez will be in the description, where to find his website, join the Wolfpack, all of those wonderful things can be found there. Anything else you just want to let the audience, all those listeners, know about you before we end this episode?
No, just I appreciate all the support that I've had from even like the two of you allowing me to come onto your show and talk for a while, to people who are purchasing the books, to Spotify who's willing to take this chance as they're just getting into the audiobook realm and produce Way of the Wolf. So just like everybody, I don't take it for granted. Like I feel like I'm just a gladiator in the arena trying to survive. And then like everybody around us who's supporting us is giving us that thumbs up, so that way we can continue to do what we would love to do. So thank you.
Well, we certainly loved having you on the show today. We were really looking forward to it. Glad that we got to have you on. And please check out his books. Again, all of those links will be in the description. Please like and subscribe to Ink Mages. And we love that you're listening. We love to have you part of our nerdy fantasy banter. And we can't wait to have you next time for all of our fun October episodes, where we'll be talking all things villains, monsters, and mythical creatures. So please be sure to join us. And again, check out Jonathan Yanez and his book coming out, The Way of the Wolf. And we'll see you next time.